Hello, my name is Brian Smith. I'm with Golden Manufacturing, and we're going to demonstrate on how to assemble a Golden standard kayak launch. We're going to go through our parts that you're going to receive in your boxes real quick. We got our bunks, outside grab rail. This is your cradle arms, winch mount, front plate. This is the winch cable. This is the cable tube. These are the lower dock support brackets that go underneath the dock. You got your dock mount grab rails here, all your hardware. We've got our winch and handle, and we have our ladder sitting here. The tools we'll need for this will be a 7/16 wrench, 9/16 wrench, a 3/4 or a crescent wrench, 7/16 socket, a 10mm socket, and a small ratchet. We're going to use a impact today to speed things up. The first step, we're going to grab our internal rollers. There's 8 of them in your kit. You're going to put 2 on the top of your rail. This bracket goes towards the inside of the ladder, and start that in the groove. And come back and put the other 2 on the bottom and slide it in. Push them all the way to the top. The next step, we're going to grab our front plate that goes right on the back of these brackets here. We're going to use our 1/4x1 bolts, put a flat washer on, feed it down from the back towards the front. We're going to use our 7/16 socket and wrench. It's important when you tighten these up to make sure these are pushed all the way to the top of the ladder where they're touching. Both of these need to be all the way forward. Just push on them a little bit as you tighten it. Next, we're going to grab our cable rollers, and they're going to go right inside the tube here. You're going to use the 1.5 inch, 3/8 by 1.5 inch supplied bolts, and you're going to put those in there like so. You flip that tube just like so. Use the 3/8 by 3.5 inch bolts supplied in the kit. Put flat washers on both of them and place those right through this tube and through that bracket. Place the flat washer and lock nut on the inside. We're going to go ahead and tighten all this up. Use a 9/16 socket and ratchet, or an impact if you have the tools, and a 9/16 wrench. On the rollers, don't tighten them all the way down, just snug them, because you want them to be able to roll inside the tube. If you crank them down too tight, they won't spin. Make sure those turn nice and free. All right, the next step we're going to do is install the winch mount. This is the winch mount on this one. You're going to use the supplied 3/8 by 3 bolts and feed them from the inside out. We want the threads facing outward. Put on a flat washer on the inside along with the nylock nuts. We'll go ahead and tighten these all down with a 9/16 socket and wrench. All right, our next step, we're going to take the cable that's supplied in the kit. Get rid of the zip tie, and we're going to feed the cable through the cable tube on the bottom of the ladder, and you want the tie-off loop to be facing the opposite side as the winch mount. Winch mount goes here, tie-off loop comes on this side. So you want to take the end that has nothing on it and feed it through the bottom of the tube underneath the rollers. It's very important. It needs to go under the roller, that way it utilizes the roller to go up and down. We're going to take the tie-off end and come up through the tie-off bracket. We're going to use the 3/8 by 1.5 bolt that's supplied in the kit. We can go ahead and tighten that down with a 9/16 socket and wrench. Next, we're going to put the cable onto the cable spool. You're going to come from the inside of the drum, through the slot, come underneath the retainer. Okay. Tighten this nut up just slightly with your fingers. Give yourself some slack. Bring the cable on around through the other side of the retainer. You want about a 1/4 inch sticking out of the bottom. You're going to take your 10mm socket and ratchet and snug this up just a little bit, and then pull the slack out of the drum. Pull it back like that and tighten this down. Be careful not to over tighten this little nut. They can break. They're just a little bolt. Next, we're going to install the winch onto the winch mount. Bring the winch on up, line it up with the pre-drilled holes. Grab the 3/8 by 1 hardware out of the kit, put a flat washer on, drop it right in the holes. One in the front, there's one in the back. Flat washer and lock nut on the bottom. We're going to use our 9/16 socket and wrench to tighten these up. Next, we're going to spool the winch up. We're going to grab the winch handle, place it on the shaft, flat washer and nut, and a 3/4 wrench or a crescent wrench if you don't have one. Snug that up. And when we wind this cable up on the spool, we want to drop this to the bottom of the cable to the bottom of the slot and hold it to that side, that opposite side. And as we wind it up, we want it nice and even all the way across, back and forth on the spool. All right, the next step we're going to do is install the cradle arms. Once you get the winch wound, you can go ahead and tighten it all the way to the bottom and grab the cradle arms and drop them in the receivers, like so. The hardware we're going to use for these is the supplied 3/8 by 3 and 3/8 by 4.5 bolts. Oh, duh. Flat washer on the bolts. The 4.5s go from the top down, straight through the tube. Oh, I gotta get down there. There it goes. And the 3s go from the inside outward. Flat washer on all the hardware. Just like so. Now these don't have a nylock nut. These have a flat washer, a lock washer, and a regular nut. We're not going to tighten these down just yet. We're going to put our outside grab rail in first and slide the hardware through that, and then tighten everything all at once. So the outside grab rail slides right in the end of the receivers on the cradles. Line them up, it should drop right in. That's why we don't tighten those up. It falls all the way to the bottom. And we're going to use our supplied 1/4 inch by 2 bolts with flat washers and nylock nuts. And we slide them from the outside inward. I can't see. And then once these are installed, you can go ahead and tighten up the 3/8 by 4.5s, the 3/8 by 3s, and these 1/4 inch. So we're going to use a 9/16 wrench and socket for the receivers up here on the ladder. And we're going to use a 7/16 on the ones on the grab rail. They technically don't even need to be tightened all the way down. Just snug them up so that thing cannot come out. Just like so. The last step is to put the bunks on. Now, the bunks can be fully adjustable for any different type of kayak or a paddleboard, anything like that. All right, next we're gonna install the bunk brackets, and then the bunks. The kit comes with 1/2x1 bolts. There's a T-slot in the bottom of the bunk. That bolt slides right into that T-slot, and it makes the bunk fully adjustable. We're gonna go ahead and slide those 2 bolts in each bunk. There's 4 total, and just leave them loose, just like so. Then we're gonna grab 2 of these flat bar brackets. These are your actual Cradle bunk brackets. And the supplied 3/8 by 3.5 bolts. And there's the actual bunk bracket. This is what hooks right to the bottom of the bunk. These holes are different size. You have a 3/8 hole and a 1/2 inch hole. The 1/2 inch hole goes towards the bunk. So when we put this together, you want to lay this on like so. You can line all the holes up and go ahead and push a bolt. Oh, I need a flat washer. We can go ahead and line these up and feed the bolt right through. And then these go right over the cradle like so, just like this. And it takes simple flat washer, a lock washer, and a nut on that side. And you can snug it up with your fingers. These brackets make these bunks completely 100% adjustable for any different type of vessel, personal vessel, kayak, paddleboard, anything like that you could ever think about putting on this thing. It's rated for 250 pounds. And these brackets allow it to cradle anything. Any shape, size, anything. These brackets go just like this. Lock washer and a nut. We're going to do that on all 4 of these brackets. Just snug those up. The angle bracket goes on the outside of the cradle. That. I guess it would be easier to put the flat washers on the bolt before I pick them all up. Snug that up. Okay, now when we're setting our bunks, we want to make sure we're keeping them as center as possible, and make sure you're cradling your kayak or your paddleboard so that's not sitting on the bottom of the cradles. If you adjust these inward, it'll raise it slightly on the cradles. If you adjust them outward, it'll lower them slightly. We've already got our 1/2x1 bolts into the bunk and the T-slot. You want to slide the bunk bolts about 24 inches away from the edge, and that'll get it real close for those brackets. These you want to keep center. You want the center of this bunk to be in the center of that lift as much as possible, in the center of the ladder. It's very important to do it that way. If these get offset, it can cause the lift to become off-centered and damage the lift or bind it up. Before we put the bunks on, I just wanted to talk about something real quick. These bunk cradle brackets they're fully adjustable. different pitch in the bunk, which I'll show here in a minute once we get these bolted on. But these can be spread out, brought to center. They can kick out a little bit further here, back up closer to a ladder. Wherever you need them placed. There's not a kayak out there that's almost the same exact shape. Some of them have a flare on them. Some of them are real narrow and skinny. A paddle board, you know, they're a little wider in the center. So you want to position these so that you can get in the launch and out of the launch without bumping into things, and also that it's easily for you to access it coming down the ladder and getting back off and going back up the ladder to the dock. We're ready to put our bunks on now. The bolts are 24 inches from the edge, and they will slide right onto our bunk bracket holes, our bunk brackets here. And you want to have a lock washer and a nut right on the bottom of that guy. Snug it up with your fingers. Stay there now. We got those on there now. They are centered because we already measured from the edge. Next, I'm gonna mount it up on our bench here real quick, so it kind of shows as if it was bolted to your dock or your seawall. And we'll go ahead and tighten all this stuff up, and that's it. The last step we're gonna do is, if you're putting a paddleboard or something like that on there, you want these to be probably relatively flat, but for certain kayaks and things like that, you can pitch these at any degree, whatever you need. But first thing you can do is go ahead and tighten these 1/2 inch by 1 bolts down with a 3/4 wrench or a socket. And that way they are tight to the brackets. Then, if you need them flat, obviously lay them flat. If you need them pitched in a little bit, you know, whatever's is good for your application. And you can just snug these up, the top one, and that'll lock it in. Do all the brackets the same way, all the bolts the same way. Come from the inside. That's about it. Like I said before, these are fully adjustable as far as the degree or the angle of the bunks, and inward and outward. It is very important that you center these to the center of the ladder. You don't want them hanging off a foot towards the bow or towards the stern. That could damage the ladder, kick it out of square, bind anything up, break a cable. It's very important to keep those in the center, your center of gravity in the center. As far as mounting them to your dock or your seawall, you want to, depending on what you're mounting it to, do a lot of research. If you're going to a concrete seawall, it's best to use redhead stainless steel. I'd go at least 4 inches. These are pre-drilled with a 9/16 hole, so you can use 1/2 inch hardware. If you're going onto a wood dock, we can supply, if it is ordered this way, we can supply all thread, stainless steel all thread for whatever length you want. Popular length is like 13 inches because of your stringer and your deck height and everything. And that's where these come into play. When you have your stringers, these go underneath your stringers. You would have your all thread come all the way through your dock mount arms, come through these holes, and put your hardware on the bottom, and you can tighten them up. So you get more coverage, more strength out of your dock when you're putting these on. These things have all types of different applications. You can do anything with them. They're great product. They're well built. Thank you for going through this procedure with us, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us.